can't see the picture clearly enough.
That will be handled just shortly, Susan. That's actually part of the roll call that Jim's about to do. So Jim, you can proceed.
Okay, and thank you for reminding me of the need to do a roll call. This is Jim Russo. I am standing in for Scott, who couldn't be with us tonight. He asked me to chair the meeting. I guess the first thing we need to do is, as Max reminds us, is a roll call. I see that we have, I think, everybody, but let's do it anyway. So I'm here. Barbara, you're on mute. Sign in. Sarah?
Hi.
Okay. And then in the boardroom itself, a town office, we have,
Jeff Erskine.
guys, let us know who's there.
Johnny Cosmo here. Excuse me.
And Max Johnstone, the planning consultants in the back, just off screen.
Perfect. Okay. So got a quorum. We'll call the meeting to order. First question I have on the agenda is, do we have any adjustments to the agenda, which tonight is talk about a pre-app with 129 Friendship Road, and then some internal business of the planning board, review minutes and some old business. Does anyone have any adjustments to that they'd like to bring up?
Yes, am I on mute? Am I on mute? You hear me?
Yep, we can hear you.
Okay, I'd like to move the November minutes to the next meeting. I just made the assumption that we'd review minutes at our regular meeting time, so I did not read this. So is that a problem?
Not a problem. We will do exactly that. Thank you, Barbara. Anyone, anything else? So is there anyone? I see we have one person online now, L34 Gale. Are there any comments from the citizenry on any matters other than the agenda for tonight? In that case, let's go to the pre-application. I believe there's a PowerPoint presentation that folks want to share with us. But before we do that, let me just do one quick thing. And that is just to remind everybody, the board members and anyone from the population at large that's attending the meeting, the intent of this pre-application meeting with the planning board is to understand what is intended, to see how it fits in with our land use ordinance, to see if there's any citizen input on what's being planned, so we can take that into account in future meetings. And in general, to look at the application as it stands now and to see if there's anything specific the planning board would like to see addressed in the final application. What we're not here for is to talk about what it's going to cost, is to talk about the business aspects of the proposed development or any contractual matters. Those all belong to the town manager, the select board, the town attorney. So if we want to stay focused on planning board issues and not get sidetracked into any of the other issues that, while they might be interesting, aren't a topic for this grouping, for this group. Okay, so with that, I'm going to put myself on mute so there's no distractions. And Max, I'll let you and the folks that want to make the presentation take it from here.
Am I going straight to the PowerPoint or?
Yeah, just put the first slide up and I'll tell you when to shift. Okay, there are only a few there, so we don't want to get too stuck on those. I was hoping they might be handed out too at some point, but thank you very much for coming out tonight and taking a look at this project that I've been envisioning for a few months and have taken on a co-developer, Bob Butler, whom you all know. So he's recused himself appropriately from his relationship with the municipality. Thank him for.
I'm sorry, and who's speaking? Is that Ron Phillips?
That's myself. I'm about to introduce myself.
Okay, go ahead.
I'm Ron Phillips. I'm a resident here on Friendship Street. In fact, just a few, not too far from the school itself. And my wife and I have been here in Waldoboro for 45 years, I think, going on that. Wow. Can't believe it. I'm retired as the founder and chief executive officer of Coastal Enterprises, which is based in Brunswick. And you might know of that organization because it's made over the past many years some investments in Waldoboro. The latest being the American Unagi project out in the Waldoboro Business Park. What happened here, well, I'm retired. So what happened here was that we walked by the Friendship Street School quite a bit. My wife and I and my kids went there. I think when it was a primary school, 1 through 3, and maybe others here as well have some sentimental value for it. But then when Head Start pulled out, I understood the town put out an RFP, and I thought to myself, well, maybe we could take a look at an apartment for ourselves, but also help the town out or preserve this facility as an historic property. And that became the fulcrum and the basic approach that I decided and resolved to try to accomplish. And if we go to the next slide, which is quite a miniature thing. The town put out an RFP. Are you with me on the,
Yep.
Everybody? Okay.
They see goals up there.
Yep.
Frankly, I don't like PowerPoints. I grew up with them. At some point in my life, personally, I turned against them because it took away from the interaction of the group or the people, whatever. But if you get a copy of this, they summarize a lot of the things. And I so hope you do get that. So we have some very simple goals. One is to develop 5 apartments, ranging, I think, from 750 to 950 square feet, 1-bedroom apartments that align with the 5 classrooms in the building itself. And we then applied to the Maine Historic Preservation Commission in Augusta. And I don't know if any of you have experience with that, but that's the process. And they take a look at your ideas. I have an application that has been is virtually ready to go. And I've answered all the questions I think that they want, but I've been holding it pending something here with the town on how to proceed with the project. Once the Maine Historic Commission approves the application for submission along the way to the Department of Interior, the National Park Service, and of course the IRS, then there's a certification and an ability on the part of us as developers to attract investment in the project, private investment. What my hope is that a bank will be the single investor and will also provide what's called the construction financing, which is an incentive actually for them to buy the credits, the tax credits. We can go into those in detail, but I think it's a little bit of a complicated, process that requires, in the end, that we maintain the property as rental property, income-producing property for 5 years, and then we pay off everybody and so forth, and have an opportunity and an option to sell the units as condominiums or keep renting the property, however that goes. But the fact of the matter is, the federal government, along with a companion state historic tax credit, I don't want to lose anybody on this, will be out of the project. We would have received the funds to preserve it and fix it up properly. And we'll be on our own from that point on. The estimated project is $1.4 million. That's a estimate. We don't know fully yet the details of what it's going to cost, but we've done some work around that and hope that we come in somewhere in that range. The attributes of the property, which I personally love quite a bit, because I mean, just talking about apartments and that sort of thing isn't necessarily the gets me excited, but what does get me a lot more excited is the public access aspect. If you know the property at all, it's about, there's a little bit of a conflict on this as to what the acreage area is. I've seen two different figures, but we can figure that out. But it's got shore access to the Potomac River. It's a steep bank that goes down behind the school, if you're aware of it. I think it drops 40 feet. It's not, doesn't lend itself to much. But I came across the Maine Audubon Society that did a sketch of activating an historic fisherman's trail down to the river. And I found that quite interesting. The community was quite interested in it. That was around the playground development. Are we okay here? Are you all with me? There's a lot of chatter going on here.
I'm just getting signatures for the record here. You can go ahead. This is just signatures.
I think we've got to change the slide because I'm stuck on this slide. And that's what I'm afraid of. 8 other slides here. I mean, 7 others.
You didn't tell me to go to a different slide.
Ron, you're coming through loud and clear. You're doing fine. Just keep going.
Okay. Anyway, I like the trail. And the Maine Audubon Society actually had done a preliminary sketch of a trail down the river. And it struck me as how interesting that would be to get that developed, although the historics don't pay for that, and create more openings to the down the river. But anyway, so the question is, what's the historic value of this building? And without that goal, I wouldn't be doing this, actually. I'm not sure what my partner Bob will be doing, but we are very intrigued about preserving that building, and that's what this is about in the end. And we feel that to achieve our goal with the apartments, we do need that historic designation. What I like about the history and the research, which I did on this project, and which Gene Lawrence helped me with, and you all know Gene, and we all know Jasper Stahl, who's, every time I look at his 2 volumes, it's just incredible the work he did in the history of this community, and as well the questions and ideas it raises for any municipality or any place in this country or world for that matter, about what place is about and their history. But anyway, he resolved and said in his book around on the pages that talked about the brick schoolhouse, which it was first called, and it was called the free school because it was a high school, and the district here wanted to keep it available, presented as a free source of education. In the context of what I understand going on, if I hope this interests you, because this is the focus of why I saved this building. Up to the Civil War, my understanding is education in the town of Waldoboro, Waldoborough, as Gene constantly reminds me to spell it as, okay, did very little for education. Kids weren't getting educated. Others towns in Maine and the state regulations were moving ahead. Waldoboro was quite behind. And there were 31, to someone's count, 31 school districts in the Waldoboro region. to control the local schools. So whatever education you're getting, a local school committee in that particular region, whether Dutch Neck or North Walden or whatever, we're controlling that. And frankly, apparently, a lot of people really didn't give a damn about education. There was absenteeism, there was not, teachers weren't paid, nobody paid attention to it. With the exception of Village District number 6, which is the Waldorf Village area, and its proximity to it. What I do also find interesting was they actually kicked out one of the districts who were really against whatever they were doing. I won't name the district. So they could control what happened with their money that they were giving to build the Friendship Street School and offer a high school with quality education and grading system and the discipline that goes along with that whole journey to public education, even to the concept of consolidation. Now, who cares about that? Well, I'm not sure, but we would like to be able to save the Friendship Street School in a way to preserve that history, and hopefully through kiosks or, descriptive areas, trails, whatever, and the allowance of public parking around the facility, keep it as a building in the community. It also fits with the profile of Waldoboro and some of the other brick structures. So that's slide 2. Now we go to back one. I don't know where.
No, it's chronological.
Yeah, there you go. As you know, the building continued as a school for 80 years. So that was all, that's been there a long time. And I've said this earlier, that the town finally put this out for an RFP out and on November 9th. And we applied for it by the due date, January 18th, and here we are today. This is an active project, the current project. So next slide then. Okay, so I've said this, the estimated value is 1.4 million. The square feet of the units are 75 to 950 square feet, which is a pretty good size for one bedroom. The average monthly rent will likely go up, but initial perspective is set at this rate. I think the rates in the town a little bit lower than that right now. We are currently negotiating, or would propose to negotiate the price of the facility. We're not sure where that's going to come down to. The timeline here is set forth. I believe the pre-development period is about a 10-month period. And from that point on, we will then purchase the facility, and the construction period will be about a year. And so in effect, in about 2 years, 22 months from now, if you did it today, if we had an option today to do this, we could have occupancy. So next slide, please. So the development team, which I'm quite proud of, is been laid out. By the way, has the planning committee seen the actual proposal that was submitted?
The board members were sent a copy of the PowerPoint, and they were sent a copy of your RFP response. Just today, though.
Okay, you were sent it?
It was sent as an email
Apparently it was
today.
today.
Yeah.
I wasn't aware of that.
Okay, well, I wrote that, so I encourage you to read it, because it does have a more sort of contextual information about the vision that we're talking about here.
And I encourage all the board members to do the same, Ron. I did find time to read, I'd say 90% of it. It is very well done. It's complete. Yeah, it's a good document. So I encourage everyone to take a look.
Thank you. So I won't go through this, but one of the advisors we have, Brian and Amanda Schusker are the local architects. We're asking for local people to be part of this process, and they they've done their share of work to help with the process. Bob, as a former banker, is is busy on the financials, which is helpful. And the person I would note, however, for the benefit of this committee, is Chris Klaus, who lives in Penobscot. He's semi-retired. He was a employee of the Maine of the Yarmouth-based Maine Preservation Organization that advocates for projects like this. And he also comes out of Boston and New Hampshire. He's had a lot of experience since the beginning of the legislation in the late 70s that authorized federally the historic tax credit program. So he's very excited about the project, actually, particularly because it's a small scale project. And I don't know whether you're aware of this, but housing is a big issue in Maine and all the boroughs, we know. And there are efforts in the legislature right now to support smaller scale projects along these kinds of lines rather than, 30, 40 unit type projects. So we'll see where that goes. Next slide, please. Benefits of the project, a listing on the National and State Registers of Historic Places, the 1.82 acres landscape, public access, 1-bedroom apartments with fair market rents and ownership opportunities in the future. I didn't mention net zero solar and geothermal energy. We don't know yet whether geothermal is applicable, which would be really important to complement solar. We don't know whether and how to handle the solar piece. The rooftop has a, you have to angle the panels in a way that, appropriate for the sun's exposure, and that might violate the historic value of the view of the rooftop, which is sort of interesting. The federal government's National Park Service is not quite up to date with climate issues and how to handle those. So we'll see where that goes. There's also the last item there on the PowerPoint is that the historic view of picture of the building, structure of the building. Sorry, I'm going on so long. Is had a gable roof and a cupola. Nobody can see these. There are two postcards that Bill Maxwell pulled out, at the Historic Society. Here, you can hand them over and then circulate those. Which had a gable roof and a cupola, and there was a great fire in the building in 1941. And so the roof was gone and the cupola. But in historic regulations or review, there's what's called a 50-year rule that if the structure is older than 50 years, it's within the site of an eligible historic building. There are 4 criteria to be eligible. What are they? One is one is there's an event, an historic event like Gettysburg or something. That's an event. A second is a person is famous. A third is architecture value, and the fourth is informational that contributes to something historical. So I think our building, the Friendship Street School, actually qualifies for 2 of the 4 criteria. Criterion A and criterion D. Okay. Thank you, Bob. I can see why you're part of this development process. Okay. Last slide. I think next steps. So that the planning committee knows that we need to negotiate an option with the town to buy this building. an option which allows us, basically what this slide says, allows us to invest the money initially, it's called pre-development money. We've set aside $130,000. And that's the outside figure, we hope, to cover the cost of the process for historics, for engineering, and various legal issues and so forth, to get to the point where we can say, this is economically feasible, this project, 5 units, this is what we think it's going to cost us with all the contingencies, blah, blah. And we'd like to now buy it. And then the town says, okay, you can have it because you've met all the conditions that we agreed to under the option. If the town doesn't quite have that available for us, we're not sure where to go, just to let you know that we're working. The next slides, there's the building. It's just a spruced up building. The windows, by the way, we believe were installed in the 40s to comply with the state lighting codes for schools, which is probably appropriate. But, you know, if you look at those postcards, they weren't anywhere near that. And there are issues around energy and loss of energy. So I don't know where that's going to go. And of course, the gable roof isn't there. So the next slide. This is, you can't really tell, it's an overview of the, what looks like more structures on the left are really raised gardens, raised beds, whatever. So there'll be gardens. You can see the parking slots. I think it's 2 units per, two slots per unit. And that's ample there, and also for public parking. I've seen a design for the playground where there's even parking on the other side, on the Friendship Road side of slots. So there's ample parking. And if we haven't shown the fisherman's path here, but we call it the fisherman's path. We got to get some more history on that. But that would allow for the parking. Next slide, please. You know, that's a sketch of what you can't really tell from here. That's the basement. That's what we think of as the garden apartment. Actually, it's the largest apartment. There are bathrooms already installed on 3 floors, so we'll work through those. But that's a 1-bedroom apartment. Yeah.
Did you say that this is the basement or the first floor?
Oh, I'm sorry. It's the first floor. Yeah, you're right. Sorry. Thank you, Max. That was the catch. That's the first floor. Oh, okay, that's right. The reason why the front portion there isn't divided up is just as an example of a design where that could be commercial space on the ground floor, basically. Okay, so the next one. And that's the upper one, right? Second floor. And you can see 2 apartments. And each with a bedroom, so forth, living kitchen, that sort of. And then go to the next one.
I can't hear Ron.
Yeah, you have to be close to the mic over there.
What?
Mic.
Okay.
We're losing the audio.
Yeah, just
Okay.
speak up a bit more.
Speak into the mic if you
Speaking
can.
to the mic, yeah.
Well, I haven't been speaking to Mike, so if anybody, all
Well, as long as you speak up, you're good.
right. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Now it's perfect. Yep.
It is perfect. Okay. Well, you can see the basement part where all the energy systems and so forth and other things would be located, as well as storage. So the basement apartment would have, that's why it's not 6 units, it's 5 units. Okay, is that the last one, I think?
That's the last.
Okay, so let me see if I have,
You need the slides up, or should I take down the screen share?
what?
Do you need the slides up, or can I take?
I don't need them. I hope people can access them if they. I think I've covered everything that I wanted to cover. That's it. Thank you.
Ron, could I ask you a couple questions? Johnny Cosno.
Yeah.
Concerning the building, it's a historical building. It's been around for a while. Does it have like good bones? Is the structure there? Are there any interesting or unique features like mold or asbestos that you would have to work around in compliance with a historic restoration? Does that give you any pause?
Yeah, that's a good question. Well, number one, Head Start was there,
Right,
and the town had to comply with different
sure.
codes and rules for Head Start to lease the facility. And there is a statement the town has made that asbestos was removed, at least in the basement. I don't know about, I'm assuming that that's not a problem, but we would have to look at that as well. As far as structural integrity goes, way back, not long ago, Randy Scamper, who's an engineer, independent in Waldeboro, took a look at the facility along with John Morris, whom some of you might know. And we went through it and they eyeballed it as
Right.
as structurally,
Excuse me.
with structural integrity, but we do have an engineer who scheduled us to take a look at this once we make the investment from Rockport, Camden,
Garney and Dorsey.
yeah. Gartley and Dorsey. And Carmen Bombeck, he is the account person for this. I think they've had some involvement with Waldeboro. And she herself is a historian, I mean, loves these history projects. And so hopefully she'll
Right,
opine on this.
right. Well, the reason I ask, I come from Portland, and of course, there's a lot of historic
Right.
thing.
I know.
And it seems like you have to do something exactly a certain way if you want to, remodel the building. I mean, is that?
Well, anyway, you're right on that. Chris Klaus, the person that is under, we will retain as an independent consultant and who's part of the pre-development costs we face.
Right,
Becomes involved in the project. He's been to the building. He's reviewed it. Frankly, he thinks it's a slam dunk by way of historic,
sure.
eligibility. We want to make sure we can build units that also are livable in some ways, and not just have blackboards facing you, right, and all that stuff, which is, the blackboard thing, that the slate blackboards are the value, and we don't even know if they're, we haven't examined the blackboards there. But if they're slate, they definitely have to be preserved. Maybe we can deal with the other stuff. But just to finish up answering your question, that's an iterative process. You negotiate those things. And financially, we need to access quite a bit of money from historics.
Right.
So we'll see where that goes. We don't know yet.
Okay. Thank
You're
you.
right
Right.
that it's an argument.
I'm just gonna say it's just a balancing act,
It's a
because
balancing
does someone finally come in and inspect what you've done and say,
Oh, yeah, yeah.
So there's a process where they.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
Okay.
It goes right up the ladder.
Excellent. Okay.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
thank you.
I think board members, when you do get a chance to look at the formal application, you'll see that there's a lot of experience in the team that Ron's assembled to execute this project that should make it successful if it goes ahead.
I have two
Board
questions.
members, any other questions? Barbara?
Yeah, just two items I'd love to mention or get clarification on. The entry, I see you on your site plan, Ron. I was very happy to see that there's a bit of landscaping and kind of an in and an out entrance off the road. I'd be very concerned with the final plans that that's something that's very defined and definitely going to be implemented, because I think having long running openings onto a parking lot are a problem. So I hope you do have the space to actually put something in, and that it gets put in and gets used, just for safety along Friendship Road. The other question I have is, in 5 years, if the building becomes basically condos, who pays for the care of the the gardens and the trail down to the river and all that kind of stuff? How does that get maintained?
Well, that's a condominium association.
So that would be part of their fees, is to take care of
That
the
structure.
public access?
Excuse me?
Oh.
Hello?
Barbara, can you repeat the question?
Yes, in 5 years, say if it's no longer rental property and it becomes condoized, is it part of the condo association fees to continue to take care of the public access property? Or is that somehow an arrangement that you want to make with the town? Or how do you see that being
Oh, that's
taken care of?
interesting. Hadn't thought of that. I mean, our assumption is it's a condominium association structure and decision as to who takes care of those or what extent they're taken care of.
Mhm.
So I don't see that as a problem at all,
Okay.
but the role of town, that's interesting.
Not that not that I think that's a good idea, Ron, but I'm just wondering, I just want to make sure that it's being considered what happens in 5 years.
We have a process to take. As a matter of fact, I think ideas like that, we need to listen to, Barbara. That's one of the things here at this meeting. I don't know where it goes, but with the select board and others, what ideas do you have might be further enhance the value of this property from the standpoint of the community? That would be the question.
And can I ask one more thing? If you decide to pursue the gable roof on this building, which I'm not sure about the orientation, I'm not sure if that helps you with the solar thing, but it might provide space for a 6th apartment. Would that be part of the thinking for changing the current roof line?
Well, there would be an incentive for a gable roof because the orientation is south. And so there are other ways to optimize solar too, other than panels. So we could go into that. But yes, a gable roof would be beneficial. And second, it would add to the economics conceivably of the project with another unit or some way of valuing it. Yeah, it's a good idea. That's 2 good ideas.
Max, can I ask you something?
Sure thing.
So if this were to go in front of the planning board in the next couple of months and approved as 5 units, if it became a 6-unit project, it doesn't really have to come in front of the planning board again, right?
I'd have to see what the scale.
Or
of
it
the
might because of parking, but yeah.
Right, and that's actually what I was going to get at. It depends on the scale of the project and how that's going to impact the proposal you're going to see.
Right. So those decisions have to be made ideally.
Yeah, that's something I can't really give a guarantee of this early on.
She needs to know that we're thinking that.
Bob, is there something you want to share with the rest of the class?
Sorry.
Stand up, but go to the corner.
Can you hear me?
Yes,
We
yes.
have discussed the idea of the gable roof and realized that if we do the gable roof, there is space available under that gable roof. And one thought was to connect half the area above the top apartment to the gable roof with a spiral stairway. And so each of the top apartments could have spiral stairways going up to the gable roof to provide additional space, not an additional rental unit, but to permit a larger rental unit on the second and what we call the third or gable floor. We're looking
Makes
at that.
sense. Yeah, okay.
Jeff, Sarah, anything else?
No,
I just thought of something. Is the building going to be handicap accessible?
Right now, there's a handicap accessible ramp.
I
I
see.
think we're rebuilding that.
Okay.
Some way to make it more aesthetically aligned with the building.
Right.
And we do have an elevator
Oh, good.
proposed.
Okay.
And a lot of these expenses that we are mentioning, like an elevator, does get paid for partially by this credits, so that's part of the process there.
Excellent.
Jim, do you mind if I ask a question?
No, please, go ahead, Max, and then we're going to go to any members of the public that are listening in if they have anything to ask. But go ahead.
Ron, if you don't mind giving a clarification on the first floor plan, it showed an apartment in the back and a retail space in the front. Just to clarify, is that a confirmed thing, or is it, as you said a bit earlier, it's just a concept in the events you want to explore?
It's a concept.
It's a concept. Okay.
Yeah, just
The other thing I noticed, Ron, is that that's actually the fifth apartment. The plans are shown of 4 apartments and the
Right.
retail space. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
yeah, we should-
All right. Anybody else out there listening in have any comments or questions?
I actually had a question about the retail space
Sure. go ahead.
possibility.
Do you
Yeah.
mind identifying yourself for the record?
Sure. I'm Gail Erdheim. I live next door to the school.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Did you get
right here.
did you get my stuff?
I got your stuff.
All
Yeah.
right, there you go.
Yeah.
Thank
So I am just curious about
Oh, Gail.
what you do know me. Right. It's confusing because Mark, my husband, is using my Gale Zoom Access. So there weren't 2 of us. But I just wanted to know what sort of retail commercial uses you were contemplating and what sort of retail options are available based on the zoning. Obviously, as a next door neighbor, that would be.
We have not, we've got ideas, but
We're losing the audio. Could Steve speak up just a touch?
how can well, you heard the question about what retail ideas?
Yes.
You heard the question?
Yes.
Okay. We have not discussed the option of retail space. There's an income requirement for that too, as a rental requirement. So would you like to rent space? Sorry.
I would not.
We are entrepreneurs here, so.
I see.
Do you have ideas?
I don't currently have any ideas. 5 apartments as opposed to 4 apartments, and retail kind of just base level sounds
Yeah.
nicer to me to live next door to, but the right retail sort of arrangement. Find it
Well, we can
problematic.
discuss further. Your thought.
All right, we're losing you again. Lost the end of Gail and now can't hear Ron.
Everyone just needs to speak up. That's all they need to do.
I didn't say anything very interesting.
So Max, if I'm not mistaken, any commercial use that would be envisaged there would have to be either compliant with the land use ordinance, the current zoning laws, or would come before us for approval if it needed a variance, correct?
You're correct on the first one, that it has to be something that complies with the land use ordinance.
Yep.
In terms of retail space, that usually is a catch-all. There's very few items that differentiate from the retail space category. But the copy of the land use ordinance is online for public viewing, and I can answer that when I have a copy in front of me. For the second item, if it's a use that's not allowed in the historic village, that would involve a change of the land use ordinance and would require a public town meeting to amend it.
Okay, so it's a pretty strict requirement in terms of what would and wouldn't be allowed.
Right. So, for example, I'm just trying to think of a use off the top of my head. I think hotel, like a hotel is something that's not allowed in the historic village. So if that ends up somehow being this proposal, that would require the town of Waldeboro to go before a public vote, a town meeting, and amend the land use ordinance to allow that to happen, whether it's something the code enforcement officer would then have to approve, or myself and the code enforcement officer, or the planning board. But that's just an example of if it is not an allowed use in that district.
Which
I would say
district
that-
are we in? I didn't see it written down anywhere and couldn't,
It's historic village.
thank you.
I would say based on the site plan that's shown as the biggest limitation for any commercial use being parking. I mean, a combination of resident parking and the parking spaces you need for commercial. Ron, that's something that the group may want to take a harder look at and see if it really makes sense to do that, especially if there's going to be some allocation of parking spaces for public use for access to the walkway in the park. That gets a lot of spaces allocated all real quick.
Can you explain that in more detail? I'm just curious about that. Because I think that's going to be important for this project going forward to make sure there's some public access. So what we were thinking 3 slots for parking and the rest for the tenants, marked.
Yeah, so there's three spots allocated. I think there were 12 spots shown on the plan.
12 spots, yes.
12 spots.
Yeah, we do the other side too. We didn't, you got, the other side of the parking lot too. There are several spots that would be.
Okay, so maybe that's the part that's missing. I'll put it this way, as a takeaway from this meeting, that the final proposal should ensure that there's adequate parking shown for all of the stakeholders or all of the users. So let's leave it at that without going into, and Max has all the details in terms of what you need for apartments, what you need for business, et cetera. He can work through that detail with you.
I mean, I might add, I haven't talked with Bob and Sally about this. They're co-developers in this project, not just Bob, by the way. His wife has some business experience and a lot of good ideas about development. But this has been historically a playground, and I don't know what what impact that will have removing the playground completely. And I'm wondering whether there's, to look at the contours of the land, whether there's a possibility of keeping the swings or something that, keeps a community frame relationship. I know I ran into this in some of my prior development experience where some of the housing projects we worked on, we were taking away playgrounds and that didn't go over very well. And so we did or modified it, Any thoughts on that or?
Just anecdotally, I mean, I've jogged past that school for the last 5 years. There's usually always some mom with a little kid, swinging and so forth. And as far as that path, I think that's an excellent idea. I think you're going to get a lot of people want to walk down and see the river. I know I would. So I'm thinking, as far as parking spaces, you might, in the summer, I think you get more than 3 people wanting to go down and take a
Yeah.
walk. So just that's my own.
We got to figure that out. There's some other options too about butters on the river that might lend itself to a conversation to look more seriously at a Riverwalk concept that is really part of a lot of municipalities in this country. Riverwalks are a feature to focus on because it attracts people and the quality of life and so forth.
Anybody else have any other comments? I've got one almost closing statement I'd like to make, but anybody else first?
I'd just like to say it sounds like a nice fit. I'm happy to see the school treated respectfully. The other, I think it would be a good gesture to work on the parking. However, historic village, there aren't really requirements for apartments in the zoning, in the ordinances. But anyway, please do what you can, because as we move forward, cars are important in our lives. But I think it has I'm happy to see that you're not expanding the footprint of the school and that kind of thing. So I'm excited to see what you do with it.
Thanks, Barbara.
Jim, if I can just jump
Thank
in
you.
very quickly before your closing statement.
Yep.
I just want to point out to anyone who is viewing this right now, we are trying to do a process very similar to what we did with 80 Gray, where the developer would do a pre-application just before the town in negotiations would go too far. We want to be able to give residents and the public a chance to see the proposal, to hear the proposal, and give their thoughts, whether it's to myself, to Julie Kaiser, or to any members of the select board, so that when we do go forward, we are able to take comments like the ones we've been hearing from the planning board tonight into this consideration. So that's all I just wanted to quickly state. And I'm hoping that with the Lincoln County News, we're going to get a lot more attention next week. Not to put anyone on the spot.
Except for one person, huh? Okay. Well, what I wanted to share is, and I'm going to go back on what I said originally a little bit. I think the area that needs the most attention is the differentiation between what's going to be done with the building and what's done with the land. Who owns the building? Who owns the land? It seems like that's where all of our comments are focusing. Playground, no playground. Who's going to maintain it if it becomes condos? Does the public still have access? All those issues are the ones we talked about. We didn't talk about the layout of the building. The floor plan looks great. The use and the use of historic restoration funds is great. I think the part that hasn't been addressed fully is ownership of the land, park, how that's treated in the future. That's an area that you probably want to discuss more with the town. That's not our purview, but I think addressing that with the town might make the path forward for everybody a bit clearer.
Thank you.
Okay. Other than that, I've said a couple of times, the pro forma that you presented to the town, I think is great. It has lots of detail and information. You've assembled a great team. I'm sure if the project goes forward, it's going to be a success. It's just, these are early days and conceptual days, and it's time to work out some of these nitty gritty details before it goes much further. Because that's what your 130,000 is for. Which I also applaud the investment team and being willing to devote that much of your own funds to making this project real. Good for you.
Ask one
Yeah, Ron has a question.
final question. Thank you for your confidence in the project and the team. Is there a way that the planning committee can support the project and share that information with the select board so that we can get some kind of endorsement that the town wants to see this happen, that's to take a shot at the historics. The historics aren't clear, I mean, that's going to be that's not a cakewalk. But if the town, the planning committee are behind this, that we care about the sentiment and the value of the history and the effort we're making to put this together, is there a way you can express this to the board, select board, so they can issue a letter in some way that can accompany our submission.
Jim, do you mind if I step in on this
Actually,
question?
I was going to ask you to do just that. Go right ahead.
I was going to say, again, similar to what we did with the 80 grade process, the planning board's to remain a neutral party. It says, Jim said at the very beginning, they are here strictly for the land use ordinance discussion and the capabilities of this project. They're not here to give a recommendation on the project. And considering the process for the planning board, for them to do a motion or something along those lines, saying how they support the project could actually be a legal issue a bit later on when this does have to come back and they have to approve it. We do have a member of the select board tonight, Bob, who I know is a involved individual on the project, but I'm also here as well, so I can give some feedback on it. The planning board really shouldn't be giving recommendations of support for a project, if that's a quick way of saying it.
I agree with what Max said. The roles are very separated. And I again reiterate, I will not be discussing this with the select board in any way, shape, or form. I'm recusing myself.
Right,
So
I should have probably mentioned that Bob's recusing himself from the votes and it is involved in discussions. It is as a member
Yeah.
of the development team.
All that said, and thank you, Max. I think that the fact that we've only come up with one recommendation and in general have been laudatory of the efforts put forward so far, speak for themselves.
Okay,
Great.
are we done? Are we?
Are we done with this part?
Yeah, so there's no public comment, huh? No,
No, they're
I'll-
coming.
aside from Gail. and Yep. Hi, Gail.
Hi, Barbara.
Gail, do you have any other comments before we close
Um,
out this one?
No, just that we really support the project. I can't think of a better use for the property. It's great.
and we heard your concerns.
So unless Ron or Bob or any members of the planning board have any thoughts, there's really nothing more to the pre-application for tonight. Does anyone have any additional closing thoughts?
Thanks to everyone's flexibility for having this special meeting on this, separating it from next week's normal meeting. It makes it a lot easier for us.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, good night.
Oh, no. We had to go through the motions, Barbara.
I'm hungry.
Right, and this is Max from the disembodied voice again. I know that on the agenda, I said there would be land use ordinance amendments, but that was really if there was gonna be time. It's completely up to the board. If you want to call it early, we'll just talk about it next week.
Oh, I thought that was next week.
I think we're kicking the can down the road again. Next week it is.
I'm fine with that.
Everybody, is there any other business before I entertain a motion to adjourn?
I think we should have Scott here for that discussion too. I'm sure he's.
Yeah, I don't want to do it without him. That's one reason I'm putting it to next week. Thank you,
Yeah.
Barbara.
Yeah.
Okay, if there's no other business to discuss, I'll entertain a motion.
I make a motion to end this meeting.
Okay,
Second,
and we need a second.
Okay,
second.
Sarah, we got a couple of seconds. Okay, all in favor? We got to do the roll call. Johnny?
Yep, aye.
Jeff? Yeah, good. Barbara?
Yep.
Thumbs up. Sarah?
Yes.
And me too. Thank you, everyone. Susan, thank you as always. It's good to see